I'm going to do a video for questions 3 and question 4. I think I'm going to make it through the time-wise, so it's not a horribly long video. So problem number 3, I'm going to take a quick look at it. I have sine squared, I have sine, so I don't need to replace either of these. What I do need to recognize is that I need to factor, okay? So whatever your method of factoring, you're going to factor. I've been doing guess and check for, I'm going to make myself sound really old, decades, all right? So I tend to be pretty fast with it as soon as I can learn how to spell sine here. So let me think here. I need a -2. So there we go, and it's factored. If you have other methods of factoring, folks, use them, right? This is not the, I have to make sure my factoring looks like Miss Curran's. No, this is you need to be able to factor in whatever method that takes you to. So once I have it factored, I am going to take each of my factors and set it equal to 0 separately. So I'm just going to focus on this first factor. 3 sine of x plus 1 is equal to 0. I am going to solve for sine of x, okay? And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to change this up so it's x prime and deal with the positive 1/3. All right, so on my calculator, x prime, my reference angle, is going to be found by doing the inverse sine of 1/3. So I'm going to grab my handy dandy calculator. I'm going to make sure it is in degree mode. All right, I'm going to do the inverse sine of 1/3, and I am going to get, when I round to the nearest tenth, 19.5 degrees. All right. So I'm going to set up a little ASTC down here, ASTC. I am going to only focus on when sine is -1/3. So sine is negative in quadrants 3 and quadrant 4. Okay. So in quadrant 3, I need to be 19.5 degrees off the x-axis. So I'm going to take 180 plus 19.5, and I am going to get 199.5 degrees. Okay, quadrant 4, I need to be 19.5 degrees off the x-axis. So I'm going to find that by taking 360 minus 19.5. And I get 340.5 degrees. Okay. So I'm going to write it over here, I guess. X is equal to 199.5 degrees, 340.5 degrees. And those are the two answers from that single factor of 3 sine of x plus 1. I'm going to change my little brain here, all right? Change focus. And I'm going to deal with sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. So sine of x is equal to 1. And I'm going to remind myself of where this happens. So sine of x is equal to 1 happens at the very, very top of my unit circle, right? Cosine sine, so here's sine is equal to 1, and that's 90 degrees. Okay? So one thing to be careful about is we've been doing these problems for a little bit of time now where you've had the radian value. So please make sure that when you read the directions it says to answer between 0 and 360, that you're answering in terms of degrees, not radians here. Okay? So those are the 3 answers for problem number 3. I'm going to go ahead and slide over to number 4. All right, so problem number 4, I've got cosine squared, I have cosine. This is, again, a problem where I need to do factoring, but conveniently, I don't need to do the same replacement that I did in, like, problem number 1 and 2. All right, so let's see what we've got here. 3, 1. If I make this a 2 cosine y, if I make this a 5 cosine y, let's go positive, negative. All right, so quick check. 5 times 2 is 10. 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. These outside terms multiply to negative 5. The inside terms multiply to a positive 6. Negative 5 plus 6 is positive 1. If, again, and I've said this a few times in terms of factoring, if you're looking at that factoring going, Miss Curran, I don't understand any of those steps, honestly, that's okay. What I care about is that you can do factoring in some way, shape, or form. Okay, you don't have to do the same factoring I do. So I am going to take my first factor here, set it equal to 0. So cosine of y is equal to negative 3/5. Not a huge fan of the negative here, so I'm going to do a cosine y prime, right? Reference angle is equal to positive 3/5. So my reference angle would be equal to the inverse cosine of 3/5. All right, grab a calculator, inverse cosine of 3/5, round it off to the nearest tenth, so 53.1 degrees. All right, so that gives me ASTC, and I need to think about where is cosine negative. Cosine's negative in quadrants 2 and quadrant 3. Okay. So quadrant 2, I need to be 53.1 degrees off the x-axis. So 180 minus 53.1. Let's see what that gives me. That gives me 126.9 degrees. In quadrant number 3, I need to be 53.1 degrees off the x-axis. So 180 plus 53.1. And that gives me 233.1 degrees. So off to the side here, y is equal to 126.9 degrees, 233.1 degrees, and let's see what else I get from the other half of this equation. So 2 cosine y minus 1 is equal to 0, which makes cosine y equal to positive 1/2. Interesting. This is actually off our trig chart. And so what I'm going to do is think about, all right, cosine of y is equal to 1/2. Use the trig chart. This would be pi over 3. Remember, though, I don't want pi over 3. I want the degree measure. So this would be 60 degrees. ASTC. Let me fill those in. And I'm looking for where is cosine positive. So that's going to be first and fourth quadrant. So down here in the fourth quadrant, I need to be 60 degrees off the x-axis. So if I take 360 minus 60, I'm going to get 300. Okay? So I'm going to tack those two answers on, 60 degrees and 300 degrees. And those four are the 4 answers that I need to look for question number 4. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this video. I'll make a separate video for question 5 and question 6. Let me know if you have any questions.